So now what? Save the world?
Anyone could be one of them.
Controller.
Trust no one.
Welcome to Thoughtspeak, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of K. Applegate's 1996 book series, Animorphs. My name is Coleman.
And my name is Mitchell, and we've got a very special episode for all of you tonight, because tonight on Thoughtspeak, we review a book that I have never read, and I'm not too sure about Coleman.
I've read this several times, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remembered every plot point of this book while I was reading it.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Well, this was all brand new territory for me.
And I gotta say, why are we even trying this week? Like, why even continue the podcast? I feel like we may have peaked last week.
Yeah. Of course you're referencing our legendary review. Or, I mean,
review.
It's a review of our conversation with Michael Grant.
We interviewed and recorded a interview with Michael Grant, co-author, co-creator of the Animorphs, this, book series that this podcast is based off of.
The whole reason we're here talking and you're here listening to us, basically.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever do better than that.
Who's to say? Who's to say? In the future, hopefully we can get both of the Applegates back for a one last Q&A sesh. Or maybe that, after we wrap up the series, maybe that's just what Thoughtspeak becomes, is just interviews with the Applegates.
We should have asked him that. I didn't even think about that. Are they the Applegates, or the Grants?
Probably legally, like, on all the mortgage and everything, probably the Grants, I would say. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think Katherine kept her legal name as Katherine Applegate, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Let's ask her.
We should.
Let's ask her how to stock them better.
But to continue on your theme of what you said, we should just, after we get the big ones out of the way, like if we get a K. Applegate interview or whatnot after the series is over, just start interviewing like the writers of the fan fiction and.
Sure. I mean, we could do a lot theoretically. We could interview people who might have directed episodes of the TV show. The actors from the TV show are still quite active on social media, I believe.
How crazy would it be? So the one I've seen active on social media is Cassie, the girl who played her.
Yep, I've heard a lot of her defenses of the show.
How insane would it be if we got Shawn Ashmore and her for a double interview and just like awkwardly force them back in to talk about the show?
I think it would be amazing if we could get the entire cast, or at least the core kids, together and then make them act out an episode that we write.
It'd be like that episode of Futurama where
yes,
the
that's
gas...
that's exactly what I was thinking. The Star Trek episode.
The Star Trek episode where the gas
where
alien...
no fan has gone before. If anyone's interested in looking
for the people
it up.
who haven't seen the show, let me explain it. There's this gaseous alien, and he collects all these former stars of the original Star Trek series, gives them new bodies so they're young again, and forces them to fight and reenact his terrible fan fiction. So we're going to do that with the Animorphs TV show actors.
It would be wonderful, and I think a great use of everybody's time.
I think so too, and it'd be cool to, because we could probably start out with like the ones who aren't acting anymore. Like maybe I think the Rachel isn't an actress anymore. The guy who played Tobias isn't. The guy who played Axe and obviously Shawn Ashmore are probably the most successful.
Yes, those two are the most successful actors to come out of it. The Boris guy who plays Marco, I don't think he's still acting, but I've seen him on social media. He's done comments on the show and stuff.
We could awkwardly ask like Shawn Ashmore, like, "Hey, you've starred in X-Men, you've starred in all these great big huge movies. You're a great actor. What would be your advice to actors starting out or your fellow Animorphs actors, how they could get into the industry?"
Well, here's the thing: we don't want to take the tone where we're insulting them.
We're only going to do that in episode this one, The Suspicion. Well,
Of course, because no one will listen to this episode. Believe me.
I'll lose that tone by the time we get to actually interviewing him. Just like if Michael Grant had listened to like any of the first 5 episodes, he would have never interviewed with us.
Maybe. I don't know. That's another thing that I wish we would have asked him is if he had listened to anything of ours in the past. Because I sincerely doubt it, and I hope not.
Because if he had, he would have heard us like saying some pretty awful things. I mean, we love both the authors, but we said some horrible things at their expense to get a laugh out of our audience in those first 10 books. So,
well, I mean, that's just the harsh realities of fandom and life.
Think about it this way. Every single time we made fun of Cassie, we were basically making fun of K.A. Applegate, and that's a lot of episodes.
I totally agree with you, and I know exactly what you mean, but at the same time, I hope people know that Cassie is like one of the characters that I feel like I can relate to on a personal level the most, almost. So, I mean, I don't by any means hate Cassie. She just gets stuck with a lot of the not-so-great books.
Yeah. Speaking of terrible Cassie books, let's go into tonight's episode.
Tonight we are reviewing book number 24, The Suspicion. And I gotta say, not sure what or where the suspicion was in this story.
Well, there was a suspicion that there might be a plot in this book, and I don't know if we ever found it.
Well, there was most definitely a concept.
There was.
I can applaud them for that. I believe it's your turn to read the back of the book. Oh, but first we gotta talk about the cover.
Well, I will just say, be prepared. Fellow listeners, not fellow listeners, I'm a host, you're a listener. Be prepared. I might be about to pull a J.J. Abrams-esque twist on Mitchell. Let's see if he thinks I actually hate this book or if I'm actually a huge fan. We'll find out.
Yeah, I don't care about any of that. Talking about the cover, looking at this thing, it's kind of a watercolor mess. First of all, not the most appealing looking of animals to grace the cover, and certainly one of the most confusing when you consider these books, like, Anteater, huh? How's that going to be useful?
Well, it makes you wonder if the book's plots and those sorts of things were, if they came up with them based on what animal they wanted to use for the front cover, or if they got the animal after they came up with the plots of the book.
Well, if we're guessing at how this book specifically was idealized and conceptualized, I would think that the whole shrinking and anteater idea was synonymous. They were together as soon as they came up with the whole tiny aliens plot.
Yeah. I do want to say, so this is interesting. If you, I don't like the front cover. The front cover is whatever. It's one of the not great front covers because it's an anteater and a Cassie's turning into it. There's not much else to say. But if you go into the inner cover, this is where it gets really interesting because the inner cover depicts usually a scene from the book. And they've gotten better about this. They actually have started, for the most part, being scenes from the book. And this one specifically points out that there's helmicrons on the anteater's tongue and, it's right there.
Yeah, I dig this one.
Yeah, it's pretty good, except think about this. So I just finished the book maybe an hour ago. And if you look in the background, you have this, I would assume, traumatized family looking on. Because if the ending of this book, spoilers, has like them morphing to Andalite to this, Visor 3 out morphine while a tail blades to his neck. This all happens in the anteater enclosure at the gardens.
Not to mention like 5-6 different anteaters just appearing out of nowhere. Suddenly the little tiny anteater enclosure must have been like packed to the brim full of anteaters.
I assume what we're looking at is Cassie in the foreground and Visor 3 killing helmicrons and probably some controllers in the background. That's him, the one moseying about in the background.
More than likely, still a really cool concept art here. I just dig the idea that they actually show us the helmicrons.
I think they had some kind of push to show more of the aliens because you start getting those advertisements and the book inserts and stuff that showed like all the Hork-Bajir and all their concepts for Lyrions and everything else. So maybe they had some kind of alien push at some point in the marketing.
Really, yeah. It's too bad, too, because they could have used this as an opportunity to maybe show off some of their spaceships or something.
Oh, yeah. I would like to see one of those spaceships. And I have something to say about the spaceships when we get there. But
Well, yeah, based on their prominence to the story, you would think, well, whatever.
yeah. Anyway, so I want to go ahead and read the back of the book.
Please do.
Cassie, the other Animorphs, and Axe have a few little problems. A few very little problems. Actually, the problems call themselves Helmicrons. They're less than an inch tall, and they're pretty upset at Cassie. They believe she stole their ship. Cassie thought it was just a toy and gave it to charity. Now the Helmicrons want it back. That's not the plot of this book. So the Animorphs and Axe have a new dilemma, because the Helmicrons have their own secret weapon. They can shrink other beings down to their size, and if they don't get their ship back soon, everyone on the planet is in for a little surprise. And that's, again, not even close to the plot of the book.
Well, it's the plot of the book for the first couple of chapters here.
No, it's not. At no point do the Helmicrons say, give us our ship back, or we need to find that ship. They just find it in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, they literally find it right away as soon as
That's not a plot point. That's a scene transition.
Okay, I guess, you know what? It's very deceiving, the way that it's worded. I'll give you that. And yeah, this whole thing is mostly just really to set up the concept, to get you interested.
Well, yeah, but if they would have just switched out Helmicron ship with blue box, that's the plot. That's all they had to do for the back.
And somebody in marketing, there probably was a draft of this summary, multiple drafts of this summary written up where somebody in marketing said, you know what? No, we can't say blue box. We can't use the extra words to explain what the morphing device is. Well, these books have to be designed and marketed so that any random kid can pick it up.
I want a back of the book that says like Escafil device. I want it to be hardcore.
Well, you can always make your own back cover, Coleman. Nobody's stopping you.
I'm gonna make it out of paper mache, and it's gonna be beautiful.
I bet it will be, friend. So that's the covers of the book. Dare I say, shall we dive inside the book?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna read it again, but we can talk about it.
Do you just want to stay outside of it and talk about it from the outside?
No, let's open our page. Let's open our books to page 1.
No, okay, well, I'm going to start this right out by telling you that the entire first chapter, besides the little tiny Helmicron journal entry or whatever it is that appear in the first couple of chapters of this story, besides that, the first chapter is skippable recap.
Which, let's go ahead and talk about those real quick. I would say I'm all for them doing weird things where they, just mix up the format a little bit. I thought that was cool. I think they did it a little too often, like after, you lost its novelty about halfway through the book, and it was still going on, but still, I like them doing weird format changes, and that's cool.
Yeah, I suppose so, and it does give you a little eensy-beensy look
just a little one.
At what the Helmicron, culture is kind of like before we officially get to meet them within the story. So you know ahead of time that they're super annoying.
Yeah, they incredibly are. And we get at least 2 books with them. So,
Woo!
Good times. Mm-hmm. I've never read the second book with the Helmicrons.
Okay, yeah, well, neither have I.
Well, we'll
fun times.
Talk about that when we get to it.
Speaking of fun times, this whole story starts out with Cassie helping her parents by loading out a bunch of stuff to take to Goodwill. And Rachel, of course, shows up because anytime it's a Cassie book, the natural pairing is the only other girl on the team, Rachel.
I want to see Cassie coming back from the beach with Marco. What's that about?
Well, and the funny thing is, they did try the Cassie Marco pairing in this book,
and it was awesome and hilarious the entire time.
We'll get to that, but Rachel shows up to tease Cassie about bathing suits or some girl talk. They show up and play Girl Talk, that board game from the early 90s.
Rachel wants to go to the mall. New plot point for her. Very big character development.
And they actually do go to the beach here.
Yeah, and they don't go to the mall and buy a new suit, though. But they talk about it, and it gets the ball rolling, and they go to the beach. And on their way back, those rascally girls just walking around in their bathing suits, not a care in the world. And Jake is waiting at Cassie's farm, and he's never seen Cassie with those few clothes on.
Oh, yeah, it's a cute little moment, I'll say.
Yeah, and so
So, like, nothing happens from here. I mean, Jake comes over to bring some stuff to take to Goodwill. He's there just so that he can be added into the plot of the story. Because this is the point where Cassie finds something is strange.
I stopped there for a moment. That pause that may or may not be in the episode later on, because we skipped over the fact that Cassie sees a little toy ship on the water pump as they're leaving to go to the beach, and she grabs it and throws it in the back of the truck that's going to Goodwill for some donating.
Oh my God! Did we flub up that?
We flubbed
the
up
very first plot point.
The only plot point maybe in this whole book.
The fact that she did send off that first spaceship in the first load.
I mean, we just read the back of the book that detailed how this whole book is about.
But that's how forgettable it is. Yeah, you're more excited, honestly, to talk about them about Jake seeing Cassie in the bathing suit. Like
I think
that's
the
more
book
exciting.
is more excited about that too. It's a long scene.
Yeah, exactly. Longer than the and it's because you knew that the spaceship was significant. But when they come back and there's another little spaceship sitting on the water pump is where it is. That's when they realize that something is weird, because this one actually starts to fly away.
I wish this whole book were explained by like Marco with a remote control in the background, like not being seen. He's just flying little toy spaceships around and making everybody scared.
Man, that would be a wonderful twist to get to the end.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, it flies away, and all the Animorphs are distressed by this. They decided to have a group meeting about it, and they want to talk about what they can do to stop whatever this is that might or might not be Yeerk-related.
Yeah, well, they have no idea, and Axe, as usual, is pretty useless in providing them any sort of knowledge on this topic.
I like this. This is it's kind of a plot point from later on in the book, but I like how the Yeerks know about the Helmicrons, but the Andalites don't. What's that about?
I don't know. You could chalk it up to just the bad guys having heard of each other because they're both off being so bad.
Or just, I mean, Yeerks, like, all they do with their day is try to find a planet for invasion. So, I mean, maybe they just came across these Helmicrons and realized how annoying they were.
Saw that they were obviously going to be no use in terms of host bodies.
I bet they didn't even try that hard. But anyway, so the Animorphs go to Goodwill.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. The Animorphs go to Goodwill because they realized, like, I guess that tiny ship, there was something to it. We better, track down the other one.
And the guy there, I mean, he just lets them in the back. Terrible Goodwill employee. Just lets them rifle through their donations, looking for this toy spaceship. And a couple little good Star Trek jokes here.
I thought it was believable.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know how Goodwills work up there in Minnesota. You just let people take what they want. Here in Texas, they're guarded.
That's actually because people in Minnesota are so nice that if you walked into one and was like, hey, I was just here an hour ago and I dropped something off, but I realized I made a mistake and I need to get it back.
Half the people.
Yeah, they'd be like, you go back in the back there and get out your little toy snowmobile. Yeah.
Half the people who enter a Goodwill in Texas, this is a true fact. Roughly half the people who enter a Goodwill in Texas, even normal shoppers, don't come out. They are shot on sight for trying to go to Goodwill.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they just like disappeared into the Twilight Zone.
They're donated.
They're donated to Goodwill.
Yeah. Anyway, so they find their ship, and the other Helmicron ship appears. Now, these Helmicron ships are called Planet Crusher and Galaxy Blaster. Is that correct?
Those words could be interchangeable, but yeah, it sounds right enough.
Planet Blaster, Galaxy Crusher?
Either way, it sounds good. I mean, they're generic sci-fi spaceship names. Yeah.
Yeah. And we get to see a little bit of the Helmicron culture and how they hate each other. If you're not on their ship, it's a very harsh reaction.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very harsh introduction to the Helmicrons and their personalities, which we see are they're very strong personality for such small of stature beings.
Yeah, and as far as villains go, they go ahead and immediately tell the Animorphs their plan to steal the blue box.
Well, they don't tell them so much as they demand that the power source be turned over to them. So they're very upfront about what they want.
Yeah, and you get a little funny scene here with the the Helmicron ship opening fire on the Animorphs and just little tiny little Dracon beams hitting them. No, this is interesting. So it says specifically over and over again that they're shooting Dracon beams. That's a Yeerk technology. Like, the Yeerks created that. At what point did the Helmicrons get a hold of it?
Who knows? Maybe the Helmicrons just... Well, for one thing, we could say that might just be chalked up to having to write these things so quickly and, being lazy and not coming up with new Helmicron technology terms.
There's definitely a faux pas that I think this book was written super quickly that I'll mention here in a minute. But
yeah.
But I think maybe that's the backstory of the Yeerks encountering the Helmicrons and the Helmicrons like stealing their technology or something. Either way, I want a Helmicron Chronicles.
Oh my gosh, I don't think anybody could handle a Helmicrons. Helmicronicles, we'll call it.
Told from the perspective of 3 different Helmicrons.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, so they declare that they want the power source, which is the blue box, and they fly away again, back to the farm to get it. And the team is like, oh no, we quickly have to morph bird and chase after it. And there's kind of an unnecessary action scene where they're all birds and the spaceship is, having a little dogfight with Tobias. And it seems like a filler action scene.
It does.
To be honest with you.
I agree with that completely. I do want to read you an excerpt. We haven't done this in a while. I have an excerpt for you.
Excerpt me, bro.
Okay, give me one moment. Opening my book up.
Excerpt it. You've been excerpted.
I would just like to remind the audience that this is a Cassie book. So this is from Cassie's perspective. Let me go ahead and read this excerpt. That was not a good idea. The impact stunned me and made my vision swim. I didn't think I wanted to try that again, but fortunately the Helmicrons broke off and hauled butt towards Cassie's farm, just a quarter of a mile away.
Holy crap.
That is Cassie.
I didn't even think about that when I was reading it.
I don't think the authors did either.
Wow.
Cassie refers to her farm as if she's not Cassie.
That's a very nice catch. Good job, Coleman. I wonder if anybody else has managed to catch that.
I don't know. Well, you know what? Our audience has been pretty fickle, I think, over the past, years. And they call us out on a lot of stuff that we don't get or miss. Like, did you, real quick, a little tangent, did you see the guy on Reddit who was like, or I guess there were multiple people on Reddit calling us out because we did not realize that in the Hork-Bajir Chronicles, the little flip page animation at the bottom of the corner, that was the different life cycles of a Yeerk host.
No, I got that. I mean, I totally got that. I know that we sounded very confused about it, and most of the confusion stems around the fact that the Ged, or the drawing of the Ged, the representation of that, looks very much like a monkey. And in fact, I mean, it just might be a monkey.
I don't think it's a monkey.
It looks like a freaking monkey.
Or maybe it's like a Photoshop monkey that they say is Jed. Either way, oh my gosh, I got an email on that, got like multiple comments on Reddit. They're just like, wow, I don't know how our host missed that. I think our audience is starting to doubt us as true Animorphs fans or just cognitive humans.
I don't know. It's really hard to judge how the masses think and feel when all we see are like 5 comments about people being like, I can't believe they didn't get the page flipping pictures.
And you know what? This isn't going to do us any favors, but what the crap are Animorphs? You're going to upvote a stupid sweater with a badly stitched Andalite on it. Like, quadruple the amount of upvotes that our hour-long interview with Michael Grant got. I'm not bitter. I'm just saying.
I don't know if it was a matter of timing, like, just the specific day and hour that we happened to upload that interview to Reddit.
You think there was a cross-promotion with our hoodies?
It just happened to coincide with the posting of an Animorphs sweatshirt, which just reaped the karma, It
had like... I didn't even read them, but it had like 15 comments. What were you guys talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, I don't know. I didn't go into it. I can't imagine.
This is why Animorphs isn't getting rebooted. It's your fault. I'm saying that to our fans. It's your fault.
Maybe it was too soon after the Michael Grant AMA happened. I believe did it happen directly on our Animorphs, or was it on our books?
It was on our books, and it was a week earlier, which you know what? That's fine. Maybe you thought you got all the answers that you needed from the author of the Animorphs, but I will say that if you haven't listened to that episode yet, he talks about the ending of the book in a way that I've never heard either of them talk about before.
Oh, exactly. Plus, I mean, we learned so much about, their feelings on the ending of the series, how it ended, where they see it going. Like, it's just, go listen to it.
Either way, I'm losing all faith. I'm getting depressed. I barely get out of bed in the morning. I'm haunted by that.
This tangent's gone on.
I'm haunted by that sweater. Haunted.
Please, people, send us the sweater.
I'm gonna
it's
wear
the
it.
only way to solve this crisis. We must wear it.
I'm gonna wear it and jump off the Brooklyn Bridge.
That, and go to reddit.com/r/Animorphs and upvote our Michael Grant interview, which is several weeks old at this point.
Take that effort, you would do that, and go to iTunes and leave us a review. Maybe it's a bad review because I talked way too long about a sweater on this week's episode, but still, that's where I'd like
this
to
week's episode is lacking content as it is, damn it.
You know what also shrinks, besides Helmicrons? Sweaters.
Yeah. Way to tie it in, buddy. Speaking of Helmicrons, they're all back at Cassie's barn area, and the Helmicrons have a tractor beam that they're like making the blue box, stick to them with. So they're kind of hauling that around.
They cut into the water pump first. So there's a joint effort here. Both ships are back and functional, and they cut the water pump off, grab the blue box.
Sure, this is all done in like this chaotic kind of action-y scene where they're birds and they're fighting them.
Well, this is our second alien bird dogfight in as many of like 5 pages. Like, it's a whole nother scene.
And it won't be the last.
Nope.
The Helmicrons have the blue box, which is important to the plot because it's their power source. And now they can use their signature weapon, which is the shrinking ray, the whole concept that this book is based around. And of course, Cassie, being the main character, is hit by it.
So I do like that link. I like that link that the Helmicrons have to the Andalites, where they recognize the power signature of this box because they've tapped into the same energy, the same power or technology that the Andalites have. And even though they don't know each other, it's kind of cool that this technology exists in another species, just instead of, I don't know, whatever Andalite, I guess the Andalites are a bunch of hippies, that they're like, let's turn into animals. Whereas the Helmicrons were like, let's shrink our foes to be our size. But they both, with completely different wants and needs and culture and background, they both created this technology.
The way I see it is they're just, they have different needs for their technology. The Andalites specifically wanted this technology that could rearrange DNA structures and matter and morph, essentially, while the Helmicrons wanted to restructure your physical matter and shrink it.
Yeah, but
specifically down to be their size.
But it's interesting because the Helmicrons actually say that it's the same technology. Like it's similar.
So this kind of technology could pop up again in a future plot point, being used to manipulate people in some other specific sci-fi tropey way.
That'd be cool. I'd like to see that book.
Yeah, the sci-fi trope book.
Ooh. So Helmicrons, they get the blue box, and they're trying to get away from this massive chaos of birds and Andalites, and they run off into the barn, not knowing what it is.
Yeah, I've already said this. Cassie, Tobias, and Marco are all shrunk.
Yeah, they're hit with the shrunk ray, and we get a very Honey, I Shrunk the Kid-esque scene here.
Well, and they even make the reference themselves, Honey, I Shrunk the Animorphs.
Oh, yeah, it's great. And as that being one of my favorite movies in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
Super excited
one
about
that
this.
I definitely watched a lot as a kid.
Oh, a ton. Wasn't The Neighbor from Minnesota?
I don't know, probably.
I think they
haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in my adult life.
Oh,
what a shame.
You've missed out. Not only, it's the perfect trilogy. Let's talk here for a second. Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. Honey, I Accidentally Blew Up the Kid. And Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. This is the triumvirate. I feel like
there are more of them that you didn't mention. Also, while we're on the topic, I'm going to go out there and say it. The made-for-TV series, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, was quite enjoyable.
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, there was a made-for-TV series that had a couple of seasons actually that just followed the Skolinski family, I believe it was.
Were they? They were just different actors.
Yeah, they had lookalikes.
I vaguely remember that because I remember the kid wearing the same baseball hat. The friend, I remember it being a completely different actor, but wearing like the same hat.
They did a lot of other sci-fi, generic adventures like time travel and other things.
Yeah, how do I remember the Back to the Future cartoon, but I don't remember the Honey, I Shrunk the Kid show?
There's a lot, and I tell you, a lot of miscellaneous 90s TV show trivia that we could delve into, like the old Ace Ventura cartoon or the Mask cartoon.
I don't want to go too crazy with this tangent, but can you just confirm...
Let's not.
No, listen. Can you just confirm my sanity for a second? There was an Aladdin cartoon, right?
Yeah, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was like my favorite show, and it was actually...
Aladdin, the series?
Yeah, and it was actually really good. Like, really, really well done.
Oh,
and
yeah.
No one
it was
remembers
fantastic.
Every person I bring this up to, no one remembers.
Yeah, man. I'm right there with you. I used to watch the Aladdin series...
on Disney.
Way back in the day.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, back to Animorphs.
Holy crap, man. Aladdin never did a shrinking episode as far as I'm aware of.
I bet they did. You're going to eat your words. I'm going to find that.
No, yeah, I know.
Genie is up to his crazy antics, and they all get shrunk.
Exactly.
Will the Prince of Thieves save them? Find out next time.
We've written the episode already. They're shrunk down now. They're in Cassie's barn. It's a big to-do. It's the whole point of the book. We've finally gotten there after 5, 6, 7, 8 chapters.
Desperately try to keep talking about this book.
The Helmicrons have been fended off long enough that the rest of the team is kind of trying to figure out what to do about the fact that half of their team is shrunk down to ant size. I think they say 1/16 an inch.
Yeah, that's the base.
1/8 an inch.
No, it's 1/16. That's what they jump off from.
Right.
So yeah, and that's really important to this book. I mean, it really tried
to
stick to the math on that. Even
until
having
they
Axe talk about
throw out all the rules at the end.
Yeah, but so Cassie tries to morph even smaller. That maybe just morphing in general will do something, but she actually almost goes super tiny. So they get scared by that concept.
Right. Yeah. They basically try to explain away that they should not be morphing right now, and I believe that's a storytelling method here to get them to just have a book where they're small humans, kind of have that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids story.
Yeah, and so you have Cassie's dad come in, and I don't know if you felt this, but this is a really cringy, way too realistic, awkward scene for me. Some parents, coming in on the kid neighbors playing in their barn and telling them to get out of there. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It was very
too real for the
strange to
Helmicron
me.
book.
Cassie's dad, who, based on what we've seen of him in the past books, he's always been kind of a cool guy. I mean, remember, he's friends with Crazy Helen.
Oh, yeah. But,
so, he's kind of all right. But this book, they made him seem kind of weird because he's like, damn kids, get out of my barn.
Well, he's just like I said, it's a little too real. It's he's too much of a dad here where he's just doesn't want to be bothered with his kids' friends who they shouldn't even be there anyway. And maybe they're getting into trouble. So why don't you just head out?
It doesn't help that Axe is there in Human Morph being really weird again, but I don't think this is the first time. Okay, wait a minute. Axe has met Cassie's dad,
but as Jake,
and probably the other someone else too, before meeting him as himself. But I mean, that seems wrong too. I have to believe that Cassie's dad has seen Axe in his human morph before this book at some point.
Maybe in his Andalite morph. We don't even know.
I'm not sure, but Axe says he's Canadianese at one point.
Ben would love that.
Exactly, yeah. Ben Tubb, our Canadian friend.
Who has not
Great
been on
to name
the show.
drop him.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, they try morphine, that doesn't work out. Cassie's dad comes in, his wacky antics, but this is when the Helmicrons come out of their ship and they show up and they take charge of the situation in the way that they think they are.
Yeah, after explaining that while they're shrunk, it's basically like Ant-Man rules because they have strength that's relative to their size or whatever.
It's not total Ant-Man rules. Ant-Man rules would be.
I mean,
they have the power of a fully grown human as a small person.
It's convenient when it needs to be, I'll say.
They can lift dirt pretty easily. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, they got swept up by some dirt and they're able to get out of there. The Helmicrons do show themselves, and big surprise, they're, the same size. They're tiny, and they look as goofy as you can see on the image. They have like 4 legs, and they just have dumb-shaped heads, and they just look dumb. They're dumb aliens. I'll say that. Also, it doesn't help that we are given absolutely no distinction between any of them. It is literally just the Helmicrons, because they, as a character, are just a mob of creatures.
Yeah, I think that was...
You get that?
That was definitely intentional. I don't think they wanted to have any one Helmicron stand out or anything.
No, and...
Except the captain. Oh, Captain, my captain.
Well, kind of, except does the captain count as a character?
The captain was my favorite character of this book.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that in a bit.
No joke.
Mine too, when you really think about it.
When you get into the ship and they meet the captain, it becomes Weekend at Bernie's. It's awesome. Honey, I Shrunk the Kid meets Weekend at Bernie's. Tell me that's not a Hollywood script ready to be written.
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right. Throw some Animorphs in there. How could it go wrong? But yet, this book, it stumbles. Hey now, come on, let's turn this show around. We can get on the rails here.
I'm
we
sorry.
haven't lost it.
Just you went like straight into like dead serious reviewer of this book where you're like, okay, now this is where the Helmicron book started to stumble.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. That was just really funny to me.
That is what we're doing here, reviewing the book.
Okay. All right. So
I went into a tangent and I had to wrap it up. Honestly, is what happened there.
Now,
they're
folks,
dealing
this
with
is where the book stumbles.
the Helmicrons appear in person, and so does the rest of the Animorphs come back to help their tiny comrades fight, and they're in bug morph and acts as a freaking giant spider to them,
which was pretty terrifying. Yeah.
Oh, it would absolutely be a horrible, horrible experience, and that is, I think, one of the biggest reasons why they went with doing this concept and this book was because they're like, oh, we can't pass up the opportunity to have little Cassie, little Marco looking up at a giant spider.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, you can tell why this book was written. Where some of the books are written to like get a specific animal's point of view or to introduce something like that, like you can kind of tell with the Animorphs books what interested the author with each book, I think. And this one was definitely wanting to talk about like molecules and like the really bacterial level stuff. I think that's...
I fully believe that this is a precursor to Michael Grant taking an interest in what would eventually become Berserk.
Oh, you think
this is exactly Berserk? I mean,
you think this is his handiwork?
Well, I mean,
because I think it's written a little bit like Katherine. If I were to guess,
no, it's like I think this is where Michael maybe took an interest in the idea of shrinking and. In his words, getting down into the macro and the micro and examining, things at skin flake sized level and all that. This definitely feels like a precursor to that.
Okay.
As a person who's read Berserk, I can say I saw a lot of similarities here.
Okay, that sounds cool. So anyway, so the Helmicrons, they're firing on the bugs and actually doing some damage, and these are the Animorphs and Morphs. So Cassie comes up with the bright idea of surrendering her and Marco so that the Animorphs can go free. Because the Helmicrons have a pretty decent shot of at least killing one of them or maiming them, maybe.
Yeah, so. I guess when you think about it, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. Like, it should be easy for them to defeat some ant-sized enemies, but when they're in bug morph and they have real guns that can do actual damage to even a bug, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so Cassie and Marco, they go onto the ship. And
surrendering quite humorously.
Yeah, and we start learning more about the Helmicron culture.
Oh yeah, this is the turning point in the book where you find out just how batshit crazy the Helmicrons are, as a species.
They kill anyone who doesn't agree with them, and I mean literally themselves. Like they kill each other if they disagree or if they're found to be at fault.
Oh, and huge mobs. They just come in with
they
their
pull out
swords and start slashing
the
each
thing
other
is,
apart.
When they describe these Helmicrons, they just mentioned the jumpsuit. They never mentioned a sword. So they just pull these swords out of nowhere, like it's a Monty Python skit. And
yeah, exactly. That is exactly right, because we had no indication that could happen.
Yeah, they just pull swords out and start killing each other. And it even like hilariously describes them laying on the deck of the ship after one of these fights, just with swords impaling them. Like literally, the authors were laughing when they wrote this.
He's probably.
Yeah.
I wish we had read this before talking to Michael, and maybe we could have asked him about that.
Hey, award-winning author Michael Grant. Let's talk about Helmicrons for an hour and a half.
We could do an entire 1 hour interview with him specifically on Helmicrons and where he sees them going in the future.
Let's just shoot ourselves in the foot. Do all this work to get Katherine on the show. Talk about nothing except book 24, The Suspicion.
There you go. I bet they would have a lot to say, not just on this book, but on the period in their life when this was written around that time.
Well, I love Michael's answer that they got a lot of the ideas for Animorphs plots based on Star Trek, and they keep using the word nacelle in this book to describe the Helmicron ships, like the engines. They keep saying engine nacelle, and that is like, I've never heard that word used anywhere except Star Trek. Like,
oh, really?
Anywhere. Like engine nacelle, I'm pretty sure it's not a thing except on Star Trek.
Oh, see, I didn't catch that.
They use
I'm
it
not a
like
Star Trek viewer.
They use it like 8 times in this book.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, was there a Star Trek episode where they shrank?
Oh yeah. There is literally, that there's the joke that Simpsons did it. Dude, Star Trek Next Generation did every plot point possible. That show ran for so long. I haven't even watched all of it, and I guarantee there's an episode where somebody shrank.
Okay. Well, I'll take your word for it, and I'll take Michael Grant's word for it too, because he's probably the expert.
Yeah. So anyway, the Helmicrons can track morphine technology, and Cassie comes up with. Marco doesn't do much in this book. He makes some bad jokes, but
he's pretty much there to be the comic relief.
Yeah, and to suggest that him and Cassie repopulate the world.
Yeah, I know. There's a sly little jab there.
A jab that he brings up twice. Just saying.
Well, it's kind of the closer joke.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Cassie suggests that none of the Animorphs in view have the blue box when the Helmicrons demand that they turn it over or tell them who has it. And they say that there's one more person with morphine technology on the planet, and he has the blue box. Visor 3.
Yeah, they just trick them into going after the Yeerks. That's what it amounts to.
It doesn't make any sense, because not only does it put the blue box in peril, but they know the Helmicrons can't actually fight the Yeerks or really do anything, so this goes nowhere.
It's like, hey, let's include the Yeerks for no reason and probably endanger ourselves even more.
Basically, the authors got halfway through this book and were like, how are we going to bring Visor 3 into this?
Well, I believe it was because the Helmicrons weren't strong enough to stand on their own as the sole enemies of this book.
I take offense to that.
That's why the Yeerks needed to be brought in.
Bring back... You know what? I don't even want the series to be started back again for any other reason than for the Helmicrons to get their due.
No, you know what? I agree with you 100%. I think the shrinking concept in general could be brought back and could be used again and better in future installments.
Yeah, but
there's no reason why it shouldn't be.
Anyway, so we get this part of the book now where the Helmicrons they go to space for like 2 seconds, see that Visor 3 is flying back down to the planet, fly back down to the planet.
Oh yeah, it's just insane where it's so hard to follow this, because they follow him in his limo and they're like zipping around shooting at him. He gets out, he's swatting at him in person. It's just a very confusing scene, made more confusing by the fact that everyone is small.
Yeah, and Cassie and Marco at one point morph to flies, and we get into that whole molecular level thing where they're flying like through the hand of a Helmicron almost because they're so tiny.
Yeah, and they have to avoid like a blaster, which still ends up kind of incinerating him a bit.
That was the coolest thing I thought about this book. The fact that they went down to the molecular level and actually watched a Dracon beam tear apart the cells.
That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's
Ant-Man did it, but
did it? Did he?
Have you seen Ant-Man?
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Well, I mean, he shrinks, like a lot. More than anyone should.
Oh, yeah. That was a big point in the book where they kept telling him don't shrink to that level.
It's kind of a spoiler if I say anything more than that.
Like I just did and ruined it.
Well, no. And what happens in this book is very different from that.
True. Completely different, folks. Go out and see
Ant-Man. Totally.
They
end up. Okay, so this is how crazy this was. They were just flying around, and they're like, "Hey, we need to go after Visitor 3." When all of this is said and done, like half the book later, they end up demorphed on top of Chapman's head inside a meeting of the sharing that's happening somewhere.
Which, good job bringing Chapman back. We haven't seen him in a while.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, he's been name dropped a bit, but now they're actually there on top of his head, and we can confirm that he's got mites.
We all have mites. I did like a throwaway line. This is one of those little things that just, I don't know, builds the world better for me, and it shows that these authors are good writers. The fact that like they say, "Oh, the sharing, they're having their meeting in the old chapel" or something they use all the time. Like it was just a throwaway line, but it just, I don't know, it felt a little deeper to me that they were just. This is where the sharing meets occasionally, and the Animorphs have scouted them out, and they know there are places where they meet, and it's just hints at a larger world. I like it. I
didn't pick up on that. I thought it was just a throwaway line.
Well, okay.
Difference in opinions.
I try to bring a little of the professionalism to this review. I try to come back from my
and I try to bring the fun.
Yeah, and you killed it. You ruined it. So
good. Killing whatever vibe you put out there is what I'm going to try and make a career out of.
It doesn't pay well, I'll tell you that.
Oh, believe me, I know. Let's see. They're on top of Chapman's head. Tobias, Little Hawk, shows up. I'd like to point out the fact that we skipped over that Tobias, when he shrunk down, they're all like relative size. So Tobias is actually like the same size as the humans now. So it's like a big Tobias. It's kind of, it's cool.
I bet in his head he was like, yes, finally.
What? Just happy to be like the same size as them?
Hey guys, you want to like go to the mall
now?
But
it was creepy as hell.
Yeah. So anyway, this is chaos. They make a throwaway line about how the fact that the Animorphs didn't want to leave the blue box anywhere because they're afraid the Helmicrons might steal it, and they brought it with them, but Axe doesn't know that the other Helmicron ship is going to try to get a hold of it still. It happens off screen. We don't see it. But the Helmicron ship flies into the sharing meeting, holding the blue box, and just starts shrinking everybody.
Well, right. This is how you know they were kind of desperate to wrap this thing up and like add some more conflict, because they had to shrink Visitor 3 and some random controllers.
Yeah,
and everyone kind of just is like scrambling to get the blue box. Like you said, it's very much like a Monty Python sketch.
It is, and I agree with you in that they were trying to wrap this up, because I think in a normal Animorphs book, if they cared about the plot and were trying to take it seriously, you would have a scene right after this one where the Animorphs regroup and talk about what just happened, and then form a plan for how they're going to beat this, or they're beaten and they got to come back from it. Instead, everybody ends up on Axe. Everybody's fighting in some off-screen battle we don't even see. And,
right.
And Cassie has Axe morphed a bird, and she's just like, "Gardens, go to Gardens. I got an idea."
I know. The whole action scene here gets so scrambled and jumbled together. It's really hard to just know what's going on in general.
Yeah.
Everybody, Cassie's great plan to kind of just like stack their heaviest morphs on top of the Helmicron ship to like weigh it down enough for Axe to catch it, and it gets a bit ridiculous.
Well,
here.
I do love one thing that happens here. That happens in a few books, and it's especially hilarious here. It's my favorite part of like the enemies, the Yerkes' enemies, is when there's no Hork-Bajir, and it's just a bunch of humans controllers scrambling to do what the Visitor wants, and they're all just running around and tripping and doing all these things, and like he jumps off next here in a moment where they all jump off Axe, just the Visor jumps off as well, and then a bunch, like 20 human controllers just start. I just picture it like they're like jumping out of an airplane, just like, Visor, we're coming.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest drawbacks of this book or this story is that we don't get it visually. And by that, I mean, it would just be such a better story if we could see what was happening instead of reading about it.
Yeah, I think there would be a lot of visual jokes that don't.
Yeah,
play
exactly. A lot of visual gags
Mm-hmm.
possible here.
So, anyway,
Yeah, like you said, Cassie's plan involves them going to the gardens.
But real quick, before that, we skipped over, and it's okay, we skipped over things in this book, but at one point, Cassie morphed a blue whale to weigh down the Helmicron ship so that the controllers could grab it, which wasn't a good idea. I don't know why they did that.
I mentioned their weighted morph stacking.
Okay, I didn't hear that part. I was too busy thinking of my next Helmicron-based joke, so...
Oh, no, did I ruin it?
You did. No.
So we talked there, but they're going to the gardens. We talked about that.
Yeah, the gardens. They're flying over the gardens. Everybody jumps off. Cassie's got a plan. She will not tell us about it, us the viewers, which makes no sense in the concept of this like war journal. I don't know why she wouldn't say what she's doing, but...
Right, and also there's the fact that anyone who went into this book having looked at its cover will know what the plan is.
Hey, that's true. They even say it at the end of the chapter, like they don't try to leave suspense for it, so they knew what they were doing. So anyway, her plan is to morph Anteater and trap the Helmicrons. I don't know what her plan was for Visor 3, but he catches on what they're doing pretty immediately. And he does the same thing. So you got this Mexican standoff between two Anteaters, Axe, who has appeared in Andalite form and has his tail blade, to Visor's throat because Visor has Tobias on his tongue.
Yeah, it's a mess.
It's a
real mess.
Mexican standoff. That was
you did it.
You laughed
You
at
did
that.
it.
That wasn't even funny. That
you
wasn't even
broke
close
the
to
internet.
funny. That was not even close to funny. Oh, out of nowhere, did you know that another Animorphs podcast popped up?
Was it the one that you told me about several months ago?
Brand new.
No.
I'm not going to advertise for them here, but I would
Tell me about it off air.
No, I'm going to tell you about it on air because I just started this. I would just say that our listeners, they could find this new Animorphs podcast, listen to the first episode, see if they can get through about 10 minutes of that audio quality. Just saying.
Oh, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Is it on iTunes?
It is on iTunes, but they do have really good cover art. I'll tell you, like the iTunes art, it's like hand drawn and it looks really, really cool. It's like kind of cartoony.
Really? You better step up your game, Coleman.
I better. It's good cover art, but I would still say I had hard trouble trying to listen to the first 5 minutes. So.
Would you? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Speaking of cover art, man, I was thinking maybe a cool thing that we could do is with these going into the ghost-written books of the series, wouldn't it be cool
Ghosts.
if
we put ghosts on all the cover art.
No, not where I was going with that. I was going to say, what if we had our artwork ghost-written,
What?
which is to say submitted by other people? It'd be a cool way to include fans if they wanted to submit their own artwork for our episodes.
But I really enjoy doing that.
Yeah, well, including the community is also a cool thing.
But I really, really enjoy doing that. It's kind of
Okay, well,
It's kind of made me a better graphic designer over the past 2 years.
Hey, you know what? I'm not going to tell you to stop, Coleman. Keep doing what you're doing.
No, that's a good idea. We could
Anyone
do
else
that.
out there who's thinking about making us some artwork, don't do it. Wink, wink.
No, I will say go on to Thoughtspeakcast.com. That's where our podcast is located. And go through the archives. Just check out the fact that we have, for each posting, we have cover art that has to do with the book in question. So I think this is a good idea. I think if we got some submissions for artwork, try to make it a pretty large picture so that we can, crop it and things like that. But just based on what you see of our stuff, make us cover art for the next few episodes, and we will choose the winner and actually use it for the show. I think that's a good idea.
That sounds like fun.
Sure. So check that out and get back to us and email us your submissions at thoughtspeakcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, let's all have fun and photoshopped together.
Community.
Speaking of communities and books and this book, let's wrap it up.
So everyone's an anteater.
As you said, they're in their Mexican standoff.
And so they work out a deal.
We get a wrap-up chapter, essentially.
We do. It's 100% a wrap-up chapter. They don't even, have the dialogue for the deal they make with Visitor 3. It just says that the Yeerks, made a deal so that they could get out and tuck their tails and ran away.
And that everybody could get unshrunk.
Yeah, they have the Helmicrons by the short and curlies because they're all on Cassie's tongue. So they convince the male Helmicrons to show them how the shrink ray works, and they unshrink Cassie, Marco, and Tobias and the Yeerks all off screen, and then just mention it in the next chapter.
Yep. It was exactly a wrap-up chapter to say, okay, and here's how everything cleans up nicely.
And just to set up a future book, Marco hints and nudges that they gave the male Helmicrons a talking to about how they should stand up for themselves.
Well, yeah, you say that that's a hint towards a future book, but I would take it more as just a weak joke to go out on, because that is literally the last couple paragraphs of the book is them arguing as they fly off into space.
So basically, Marco sets back women's suffrage for a good, probably 1,000 years in the Helmicron race.
You also got to remember that they live in a weird backward society where the women are the dominant ones and the men are the subservient.
Do you really think that's going to go over well with our very liberal and female audience? You saying it's a backward society where the women rule?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anywho, I believe that's the end of this book, thank goodness.
Yeah. Was there actually any kind of little end scene?
No, literally, that was it.
It was a big deal, too. I guess one thing we didn't mention is a big deal that Cassie figured out that any new morph that they acquire can unshrink them. Because if you think about it, the whole Z-space, pulling mass, and creating a new form, it doesn't matter that they're shrunk. If an ant, a literal sentient ant, acquired morphine through the blue box, they could morph to a gorilla at full size just as easily as Marco can. So that's what they do. They acquire a new morph, get new DNA that hasn't been messed up by the Helmicron's shrinking ray, and that's how they're able to morph full-size anteaters and wrap up this book.
Yeah, I know. We kind of skipped out on that explanation, but I didn't really like that point.
I did, because it does make sense. Following the science of this book.
I didn't think it made sense.
It did, because if you think about it, like I said...
why would they still have giant DNA?
Because it's not giant DNA, it's normal DNA. They told us that the Helmicron shrink ray affected the DNA that was already in their bloodstream. So, if they morphed a hawk is still going to be smaller than their current form, because they had already acquired the DNA, and everything was messed up by the shrink ray. But... like I said, if we weren't human-sized, if all humans were 1/16 of the size that we are now, and the Andalites came to our world and let us acquire the morphing ability, and we wanted to morph, like I said, a full-size gorilla, acquiring that gorilla would make our tiny bodies grow to the gorilla's size, because that's how morphing works. When you morph an elephant, you don't morph a human-sized elephant, you morph to whatever the elephant size is, because you just pull mass out of Z-space to make up for that. So
their dilemma could only be solved by acquiring a new morph.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Okay.
It actually makes a lot of sense. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, it was a very clean wrap-up to the whole problem.
Yeah. So, again, was there any kind of ending scene to this? I mean, they go to the beach?
No, there's just a couple of very very minor, lighthearted jokes that the book goes out on. Like you said, there's Marco making the callback to, now that Cassie's the same size as Jake again, I guess we're going to give up on repopulating the land of the little people or whatever.
And this is after Jake asks Cassie on a date to the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is actually a little creepy, because their whole conversation, her and Rachel, were how... does Jake think I'm dumpy? That's why he's acting like this. And Rachel's like, no, he's checking you out. That's why he's acting like this. And then it talks about Jake slipping glances at her body. And then Jake's like, let's go to the beach. Let's go to the beach. You want to go on a date to the beach? Let's go to the beach.
Well, he's that age, dude. It makes total sense.
It does. I'm just saying.
I gotta say, I was a person who lived a stone's throw away from a beach, and I was constantly wanting to go there with as many different girls as I could get down there as possible too.
I thought they called them swamps in Minnesota.
No, I believe we are the land of 10,000 lakes, not the land of 10,000 swamps.
Land of 10,000
Although there are
swamps.
probably, I'm going to say, at least 10,000 of them could be classified swamp-like.
But, I mean, do you really call a lake beach a beach? I mean, you think of the beach, we think of waves and seagulls and...
You know, when I think of the beach, I don't think of Texas.
I don't... Why? We have a coastline, the Gulf of Mexico. It's huge. It's one of the largest strands of beach
When I think of
in the
Texas,
world.
I think desert.
Yeah, it's West Texas. Texas has every single climate.
You don't want to have this lake fight with a Minnesota person, trust me.
I'm just saying, you don't really have a beach.
I got well over 10,000 lakes to choose to drown you in, sir.
We got South Padre.
You
we
want
got
to try and drag
Galveston.
me to your coast? Be my guest.
Look, just because a Texas coast has like 17 oil refineries that you can see within distance, it doesn't mean it's not a beach. It's just a really
I will
gross
drown
beach.
you in oil.
Sorry, my state is already trying to do that.
We can get into reviewing this book, can't we?
We can review you. That's what's going to happen.
You can do that right after I give my review.
Okay.
How about that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so starting us out here, this is purely a concept book. They had the idea, we want to do a shrinking story. We want to take some of the kids and shrink them down and make them interact with the environment and, experience that whole plot. They came up with a cool concept alien to introduce the shrink technology. Helmicrons are all right. They're okay. They're way better than the Arn. They're no Chi, but, they're up there. They got kind of a dumb design, but that's forgivable in this series of very bizarre looking creatures. But this book right away hits me wrongly because some of these books, or I will say most of the Animorphs books, are divided into kind of like an A plot and a B plot. You know what I mean? There's multiple stories going on.
Yeah.
This book had none of that. This was a solely A plot book. It was Animorphs shrink, chaos ensues. And then the end point is always going to be Animorphs unshrink, everything reverts to normal. That was the only concept they had in doing this book. And the fact that it is you could say it's their final book before switching over to the ghostwritten format, even though they do continue writing books in the main series. But looking at it, after reading this book, I felt their tiredness. Michael Grant told us himself that they were out of ideas by book 11. And this book was the culmination of that feeling. It just felt lazy in all of its writing. It felt rushed. It felt like this might have been a first or second draft of the story idea. It felt like they had very much run out of ideas, even though shrinking is a cool concept and they could do a lot with it. I was disappointed to see that it was pretty much turned into this race to get the box and race against the Yerks. And just felt the whole story fell into a lot of tropes that we'd revisited before. So overall, it just ends up being a neat concept and little more than that. This is not required reading in any way, shape, or form. I can't recommend this book to any of the fans. I understand why I skipped it. The Helmicrons are incredibly simplistic. They don't have a whole lot of depth to them as creatures go. When they fly off at the end, I'm quite happy to see them go, and I'm kind of thinking, I hope they don't ever come back. I wish there was a better way to bring shrinking technology into the story and a more concrete and better, richer story to tell with that kind of technology. That's just not found here in this book. And because of all of that, I've been wavering on my review. But I think I'm sitting pretty solid at a 2 subservient male Helmicrons.
Wow.
That's my review.
Is that like the first under 3 review you've ever given?
No, I believe that the other Cassie book, The Secret, was a 2 as well. That was the skunk book.
Yeah. Well, on the Mitchell scale, that's really like a 1. So you're very positive about books, even though the ones you don't like.
Well, I the only reason I got a 2, and I felt like I was going to give it a 1 throughout this review. But the reason it gets a 2 is for that cool concept. I mean, I could have said a 1.5, but that's just splitting hairs, so I'll give it a 2.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 2 because I like the concept. I like shrinking. I like the Helmicrons. Kind of, sort of. They need to be reworked, but the biggest problem with the Helmicrons is that they, like I said, there's not a single character that you can latch onto. I mean, they give you like, okay, here's one of the males so that you can see how their male culture is. And that's really it. And then it's basically different crews or different ships of Helmicrons. So you don't get like a Visor 3 type character to latch onto and feel for the Helmicrons. They're basically just a nuisance.
Yeah.
They're like Team Rocket.
True. So for me, I'm actually going to be a little more positive about this book. I hid that from you. It was a huge twist. You didn't see it coming. I actually really enjoyed this book for the most part. It does skip around. You can tell that the authors were not super committed to telling this story, but I think something cool came out of that. To quote Monty Python, I think the theme of this book is, and now for something completely different. It's so wacky, and they so don't care. They just wanted to get a book out, and you could tell they were laughing while they wrote it. And that gives us, I mean, in a series of 54 books, and plus Chronicles, plus whatever, however many there are officially, I mean, it's nice that we have these one-off books that we can just laugh about. And I think it is fairly enjoyable, and there's some good jokes in there, and some Monty Python-esque antics. I really enjoyed a lot of that, and I think going through it, it was fun to see just a completely different writing style and thing come out of it, even if they didn't mean for it to be that way. So I enjoyed us talking about it because it led to a bunch of tangents and laughing about different things. So I'm actually going to be a little more positive. I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 Helma Chronicles. And I still...
Oh my gosh, that's the term I coined.
And I stole it from my review. And I want that Helmicron Chronicles book now. I do. So
sure, why not?
My biggest regret of the introduction of the Helmicrons in this is that they didn't factor more into the end of the series.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, like we need them showing up, mucking about in book, in the 50s.
They should have been the cliffhanger that the series left out on, is they go to the edge of known space and they come across a new enemy, fully grown Helmicrons.
No, dude, they should have... The logical progression is a book where the Helmicrons come back and they are now grown to human size.
Or, no, check this out. So, that alien species at the end of the series, the one, or whatever it is, that absorbs other species, what if it, before turning into its final form or something and being like a real enemy of like Visor 3 importance, what if it absorbed some Helmicrons, and that's like the kind of that kind of insane mindset is what they had to deal with in a actually fearsome enemy. That would be a book.
There's definitely a lot of interesting things that they can do, though I just think primarily the biggest sin of this book is just its overall forgettableness.
Yeah.
It's just a very forgettable book.
Yeah, I mean, I think its overall sin is just that. If it had as a sin, it's just not... That it's a book that matters, and that the plot just moves along to move along. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So,
exactly.
Anyway, so if I remember correctly, the sequel book, I think I've read it once. It tries to recapture that comedy-esque tone of this book. So whether it works better or not, we'll find out.
Sure. Well, as somebody who has only known about the Helmicrons through other people's descriptions, I am able to now say I don't care if they come back.
Well, they do. So
I know.
We might even get the Helmicrons in Atlantis. I have no idea. I have no idea where they're going to show up next. So anyway, yeah, that's our discussion and review of book number 24, The Suspicion. So I hope you enjoyed that, and go back, check out some of our earlier reviews, check out our Michael Grant episode. We've had a really big push of listeners over the last 4 or 5 episodes, and I've really enjoyed, I guess people are excited that we're putting out episodes more regularly again, at least a lot more than 2015, I'll tell you that.
Oh, there's no way that we could do less than that at this point.
Yeah, we've already topped it. So there you go. But
Nice.
Anyway, so I want to keep this going strong. I think we're about to get into some books that may end up like this episode. It might be tangent central from here on out. I mean, we've got a great book with book number 26, but 25 is the start of the ghostwritten books, and 26 and 33 are the only, or 32, are the only K. Applegate books we get, besides the Chronicles, the Megamorphs, and the final books of the series. So our ghostwritten reviews, I know there's a few books that we're actually going to be really excited about that are really good. I think the rest are just going to be a tangent fest. So look forward to that.
Good talks with my buddy.
Yep, that's
I'm looking forward to
this
it.
podcast is going to morph into. It's going to be like one of those general chat podcasts.
And I'm especially excited for our next book, number 25, The Extreme. Because not only is this our first ever ghostwritten book, not only is it a book that I don't believe I've ever read, it is also a Marco book, which I think we're in need of after a while of absence from him.
But it's a Marco book not written by Michael Grant, so I don't know if that's going to be refreshing or cringeworthy.
Well, you know what? Since they just had the concept and handed it over to a ghostwriter, maybe the ghostwriter decided to make it or try to make it more funny.
Yeah, well, we'll see if that actually works or not. But anyway, some of these ghostwritten books, they could benefit from just having fresh eyes on the series. The ones where they won't benefit are where they literally have ghostwriters who don't care about the series or the personalities of the characters.
Right, yeah. I'm just hoping to see these ghostwriters not just keep rehashing the same tropes and archetypes of the characters over and over again throughout the series. I'd like to see some growth.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to those. We're going to be with you the whole time as we delve into these ghostwritten books, and a lot of these are going to be first-time reads for me and Mitchell, so definitely looking forward to that. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed listening. Again, we really appreciate any reviews or ratings we get on Stitcher or iTunes. Those super help out the show. We want to get out to more people, and now we've actually got some competition from multiple Animorphs podcasts on iTunes. So check those out, and I'm going to go ahead and lay this out there. I know normally on a podcast you wouldn't tell your listeners to check out your rivals, but I want you guys to check them out. I'm sure they're perfectly good hosts and perfectly good people, but I want you to listen to those shows and see if me and Mitchell are actually bringing anything different to this genre, these books. I mean, this Animorphs fandom. Are we just random fan fiction that no one wants to read, or are we like Cinnamon Bunza, who are actually adding to the love of the series? Are we doing this professionally? Are we trying to make a good podcast for you all? If you listen to those other podcasts and you think that they are better listens than ours, by all means, I'm all for you jumping over to them, giving them some fandom. But if you think our podcast stands a little bit higher, if you think that we really care about what we're doing here, I would say that I'd challenge you to actually, leave us a review on iTunes and let us know what you think.
Yeah, and report back to us and let us know all your thoughts and feelings.
This is not to be...
And your social security numbers.
This is not to be mean or anything to the other podcasts or to call them out. I'm just saying that I think that me and Mitchell actually really care about the series, and we care about these fans and this community. And I think that we put a lot of work into this podcast and doing a lot of that. So I'd like to actually challenge you guys to show us a little love back. So far we've asked nothing of you. Now I'm asking something of you. Let us know. So anyway, and again, send us your episode art for the next couple episodes, and we will possibly use those as well. So I got to jump off here. I think my wife is texting me like crazy. She wants to know where I am. So
great. Well, that's a perfect way to end this episode. Everybody, thank you so much for listening, and tune in next time for a review of The Extreme. Until then, I have been your host, Mitchell.
And I'm Coleman.
See you later, people.
Bye, everybody.